What we're gonna start with actually is confirmed names, and the names themselves are not what I care about in this announcement, but one of the special things that happened during the stream yesterday is they showed a couple of cards in Blazing Dominion, which if you didn't know, because I think this comes up every time they do this, from these pictures, you can tell what rarity some of these cards have. And I think that is something that's interesting to talk about with Blazing Dominion, because there's a couple of cards that are very, very good in this set, and people were waiting for confirmation what the rarity is going to be on those cards, and we do have it now, so we can talk about it. All right, let's go through it. We have the Crimson King, which, if you can't tell from the picture because of the silver naming here, most likely a secret rare, which is the cover card of the set. Or actually, it might just be an ultra rare, and this could be the Starlight rare, because it doesn't quite have the rainbow color that secret rares usually have. I don't want to assume from this, but I think it might be secret rare or ultra rare / Starlight, because I think recently the cover cards have been ultra rares for most of the sets. So that's that. But I think for this card, quite frankly, it's a cool card, I think, but it doesn't really matter that much if it's an ultra or a secret, because it's not going to be part of like a meta deck. So I think it's not going to be a super expensive secret, even if it is one, but there's a couple other cards that are more important when it comes to the rarities. And then Red Hypernova Dragon is gonna be, if it's a black text on a monster, that means it's either a common or a super rare. For this one, I would guess super rare, but yeah. All right. And then for the Power Patrons, actually, we have a couple of announcements alongside another new card that we have to take a look at later in a separate post. But the Power Patrons, from what I can see, decently low rarity. I mean, they've got the Vidolium as a common or super rare. They got the Nervado as an ultra rare, which is the Archmage Power Patron. The Archmage Power Patron is an ultra rare. The Jupredo, which is the Doom Z Power Patron, is also common or super rare, as well as the Junoldo as an ultra rare as well. So the Power Patrons themselves are not going to be that expensive, because for the most part, ultra rares these days usually don't go for a lot in these core sets anymore. There's sometimes some could go for like 5 to 10 maybe, but I don't know. The thing here is with the Power Patrons, there are a couple of spell cards that I don't think they revealed in yesterday's stream. So there is very well the possibility, I guess we can count how many secret rares we already know, but I think there's a possibility that one of the Power Patron spells could be a secret rare, right? Say that to Fenrir, you forgot about Magnamut? Yeah, okay, but like, I'm aware that there's exceptions, but the Power Patrons are not on the same level of playability and also generically good as like Fenrir or Magnamut. Like, yes, there are exceptions. Sometimes we do have expensive supers or ultras, but usually that applies to cards that are really good in a lot of different decks, right? Like both Fenrir and Magnamut were very strong generic cards that you played in a lot of different decks. That's why they were expensive. I don't think that's quite the case with the Power Patrons. These are more so comparable to, like, let's say the Radiant Typhoon ultra rares, right? The Radiant Typhoon ultra rares were not dirt cheap, but they weren't super expensive either. I think like for the majority of the formats, they were going for like $5 to $10. At least that's what I picked them up for in the beginning. And I guess it depends on how good exactly Power Patron is going to be, but I don't expect the ultra rares to be terribly expensive. It also depends on how often you play them in the deck, but yeah. We have the Charmer Link 4 confirmed as an ultra rare. This, I think, is a good card. I think in the beginning, it's not going to be super expensive because I don't know immediately where it's going to see a ton of play. I don't think it's present in any of the expected meta decks, but I do think this is a pretty solid card in general. So if this card is cheap on release or around release of Blazing Dominion, I do think this is a good card to pick up and just have a copy to eventually use. Because this is the type of card that, like, it gives me Xalantis kind of vibes or Abao AQ kind of vibes, where like it's a good generic card. There's no immediate use case for it, I think, in the upcoming meta decks, so it's not going to be super expensive because a lot of people won't need it immediately. but still, it's a very decent card to have. I think, especially if it's going to be like a couple bucks, you should probably pick one up. Is how I personally feel about it. And here's the big news, and this is something that, I mean, it's expected, but at the same time, it's still something I feel like we should talk about. Hydraulis Harmonia, as you can tell from the picture here, has been confirmed as a secret rare in yesterday's stream in Blazing Dominion, which, to be fair, is not surprising, but I still had a little bit of hope that they would do like the Magnamut or Fenrir thing and give us the super rare or ultra rare treatment on this card. It's going to be hard to say how expensive exactly this card is going to be, because on the one hand, it is incredibly hyped right now. Everyone is looking forward to this card and understanding how good it is. And a lot of the decks that are going to be meta in the upcoming format are going to want to play this card. Cool Tune, Mitsurugi, other synchro strategies like Archmage. I think Archmage is not the Elf Node, is the synchro one, my bad. Like there's a lot of decks that can use this card. At the same time, I don't know how well it compares to other super expensive staples from the past. We talked about this on yesterday's stream, where people in chat said like this is going to reach the price tag of something like a Molcharmi Fuwalos, which I'm not sure is the case, because Molcharmi Fuwalos is a card that quite frankly just goes into literally every single Yu-Gi-Oh deck if you have access to it these days. So it's usually a 3-of that every single Yu-Gi-Oh player wants. So, and I don't quite think, I mean, this card is incredibly good, but there is a lot of decks that can't play it still. There's a lot of good decks that can play it, but there's also a lot of the good decks that simply won't. So I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to reach the price levels of Molcharmi Fuwalos. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is just, we're talking about, is this card going to be 50, 60, or even $100? We're never talking cheap, right? This card is never going to be cheap. Some people are saying it's more like Dominus Impulse. That's what I would also personally compare it to as well, where I would say like Dominus Impulse is a fitting comparison, because Dominus Impulse was a really good card and also a 3-of in the decks that could play it, but not every deck could play it. So the demand for it was not quite as high as it was for Molcharmi Fuwalos. And it still was an expensive card, but it never, I don't think it ever reached the 3-digit mark for Dominus Impulse. As far as I remember, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember Dominus Impulse ever being 3 digits for a card. Which doesn't mean it was cheap, to be fair. That Dominus Impulse still was a really expensive card, even if it peaked at around like $70, still is incredibly expensive for a piece of cardboard. And this is something that with Blazing Dominion, we do have to talk about this, because I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! In general has been making a lot of progress recently and a lot of steps in the right direction to make the game more affordable. And I think Blazing Dominion, as amazing as the set is, there's a lot of really good cards in here. Hydraulis Harmonia in particular could pose like a problem for this entire situation, because I feel like with all the good things that have been happening for the affordability of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, like this card might be a step in the wrong direction, because like the way I look at it, and this is just my personal opinion, is like I don't mind it as much if like one of the meta decks is expensive because like the core of the deck is expensive. Like if let's say a Marshmallow Yummy is an expensive card, like I know it's not optimal, but I can live with that as long as there's other options in the format that you can play. Like, okay, well, if you don't want to spend the money for Marshmallows, then maybe like you play Draco Tail, or maybe you play Mitsurugi, or maybe you play K9 Vanquish Soul or whatever. It's all right. You just can't play Yummy if you can't afford Marshmallow, right? However, I look at it a little bit more critical when it's like the non-engine cards, right? And I know this card also doesn't go in every single deck. There are decks that don't need this card, which is something that you're just gonna have to choose if you don't want to spend the money on this card, right? But I still think like non-engine is something that should be more like accessible for people. And I think that is something that's annoying about Hydraulis Harmonia in particular being a secret rare. I mean, yeah, this is something I have hope for this to change a little bit once we get overframes in core sets. To be clear, Blazing Dominion, as far as I'm informed, is not a core set with overframes yet. I think that is going to start with Chaos Origin. So there's no other like chase cards in the set to soak up the value in terms of like premium rarities, right? Of course, you have the Starlights as usual, but we do not have overframes, which would cause some people like collectors to rip open the set a bunch, and then maybe there would be more copies of the secret rares on the market, and then maybe they could be worth a little bit less. That whole thing isn't happening with Blazing Dominion, so Fedralis Harmonia is probably looking to be an expensive card, even though I personally am not sure if it's really going to maintain a like you guys were saying, like the pre-sale for this card is like 120 bucks right now. I don't think it should hold that price tag. Pre-sale is always something that you cannot really rely on when you look at the value of cards. And for all the logical arguments that I can make, I don't think that this card should reach 3 digits, because once again, I think it's a really strong card, but I think in terms of the demand, it's more along the lines of something like Dominus Impulse, because it's not going in every single deck. Like it goes into a couple of strong decks in the format, but not every single deck needs this card, and so I think it's not gonna. I personally don't think it should demand a such a high price point. I think it should drop a little bit lower, which still by no means this card is not going to be cheap, which is unfortunate, but I don't think 3 digits is accurate personally. Yeah, but once again, not any market advice from me. I've been wrong on this countless times in the past, so take it with a grain of salt. But I just in general, I wanted to get that out of here, that like I'm not sure how I feel about this set having a bunch of really expensive secrets, because we're gonna get into a couple other ones as well. Because I was really enjoying the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh was getting more and more affordable, especially if you take into consideration that something like Mitsurugi, which really wants to play this card, Mitsurugi is one of the most affordable decks in the game right now because of the legendary modern decks. You can essentially play a full Mitsurugi deck for like 30 bucks or something at the moment, or even less, I don't know exactly. But the fact that Mitsurugi is going to need like Dominus Impulse and Fedralis Harmonia, and maybe also Dominus Spark, which we're going to talk about in a second, you can play a suboptimal version of Mitsurugi for 20 bucks, I suppose, and that deck might still be able to perform. But if you're really going to want to like maximize your chances of doing well with the deck, then it's going to be pretty costly, right? Which is going to feel bad for the budget players, but that is just how it's going to be, unfortunately, for Fedralis Harmonia. We have the Rahamu, Envoy of the Sacred Tome, which is a solid Fairy Link 2 as well. That is going to be super rare or common. We have people have been making fun of the translation of this card. It's called Super Duper Polymerization, which is funny. I personally don't mind it. I think it's funny. I like it. I don't mind it if a card has a goofy name like that. So yeah, Super Duper Polymerization is going to be in this set. And here we have the thing that I just mentioned. We have Dominus Spark, which is going to be a secret rare in this set as well. Now, here's the thing. One of the worst things that can happen with a Yu-Gi-Oh set is that it only has like one good secret rare or something like that, right? This is some of the most outrageous price tags in the past have been on Yu-Gi-Oh cards when they were like the only good card in the set. A good example of this, even though it's not a core set, is Baron de Fleur, which was an ultra rare in Legendary Duelists in a set that outside of Baron de Fleur had like pretty much nothing. And I think Pot of Prosperity, now that you mention it, is also I think Pot of Prosperity is also an example of this, where like the set just wasn't all that good overall. There weren't a lot of chase cards in it, which as a result, if the only good card you can pull is Pot of Prosperity, then Pot of Prosperity is going to be exceptionally expensive, right? So in some ways, the fact that Dominus Spark is also a secret rare could help the price tag of Fedralis Harmonia a little bit, because if Fedralis Harmonia is not the only card worth chasing in this set, then maybe it's going to pull down the price tag of this card a little bit. At the same time, of course, Dominus Spark is also not going to be a cheap secret rare. Once again, this card I think is a perfect comparison to Dominus Impulse. This card I think is even a little bit worse than Dominus Impulse. So in the long run, I would expect this card to be, well, slightly less expensive than Dominus Impulse, but it is still a really, really good card. And those two are not even the only good secret rares in this set. Another secret rare that is very good is Solemn. Well, it was called Solemn Report, but it has been translated as Solemn Accusation. This is the card that single-handedly destroys Sky Striker and Radiant Typhoon, because you negate a spell trap and then you can choose for your opponent to banish all the copies of it from their deck and hand. So essentially, if your opponent activates MST and Radiant Typhoon, the card is gone forever. If your opponent activates Engage, the card is gone forever. So that is going to be that's going to be a very strong side deck card moving forward. And I'm not a big fan of the card's design. I've been pretty vocal about my dislike on counter traps and Omni Negates in general recently. But I mean, we don't have to go into too much detail here. This card is a very good card, no questions asked. It's going to be not a side deck staple, but definitely a card that people will want to play in their side decks. And it is also a secret rare, so this is also going to be a good pull. Definitely not as popular and as good as Dominus Spark or Fedralis Harmonia, but it is another solid secret rare in the mix for Blazing Dominion. So yeah. And then this is something that I have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, I think this is incredibly cool, but on the other hand, I'm a little bit sad as well. Clown Crew, which is an archetype that I'm very much looking forward to. These are, I think, probably my favorite cards I've reacted to all year so far. It's probably the archetype out of 2026 I'm looking forward to the most. And they have zero ultra rare or higher. Everything in the Clown Crew deck, and they revealed all of them. Every single card in this deck, at least for Blazing Dominion, they get more cards in Chaos Origin. Maybe they get other like higher rarity cards there, but everything here is common or super rare, which on the one hand is going to make this a super cheap deck to pick up. I think that's cool because it is, at the moment, let's be clear, it's looking more like a rogue deck. At least from the current situation in the OCG, where I mean, maybe it's going to pick up some steam after the Chaos Origin support, but for now hasn't really seen any impact on the format, hasn't really been played that much, at least in the competitive space. It hasn't really done anything, so it is definitely more on the rogue side. So it being a cheap option that people can just pick up to try it out is something that I'm all here for. At the same time, I feel like if this had like an ultra rare or two, because it is a rogue deck, the ultra rare wouldn't have been worth anything, to be fair. Like, if I guess you can view it one of two ways, right? Like, for example, if this card was an ultra rare in this set, right? If this card was an ultra rare, it probably wouldn't have been expensive, right? It would have been like €1 or €2, probably, maybe $3, right? If the archetype is popular because people want to try the rogue deck, then maybe it would have been a little bit more, but there's no way it would have been expensive. I don't think. I don't think, personally. It's completely hypothetical because it doesn't happen, but I feel like it would have been a cheap card because it's at the moment it's a rogue deck. So I would have liked this to be higher so that you can pick up Starlights if you want to, you know, play the deck, but it is okay. At the end of the day, I'll take it. I would have liked to be able to pick up like a Starlight Rare version of the clowns, but I think it's all right. Everything common and super makes it a very accessible deck, which I'm all here for. At the same time, it is a deck that can play Dominus Spark, and it's also a deck that can play Fedralis Harmonia. So much for the budget aspect of it. I mean, I guess you can just play a version. You can just play a version of the deck without the cards, but at the end of the day, it's like the same situation as with Mitsurugi. Like, the optimal version of the deck is probably going to play Fedralis Harmonia and or Dominus Spark, right? So yeah. And those are the rarity reveals of cards that we already knew. None of the effects here are new. It's just something I wanted to talk about because specifically the rarity of Fedralis Harmonia and Dominus Spark, I think, are very impactful. And I thought it was worth talking about it because I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that this is going to make Yu-Gi-Oh! At a high level more expensive now. And I think this is something that is, even though it was predictable and I'm not surprised by it, I'm still a little bit sad about it because I was really happy about the direction that the game has been going recently with like the affordability and stuff. I feel like it's done a lot of good things for the game, like the legendary modern decks and all the reprints that they've been doing, and also the overframes I think are going to help in that regard. It's just unfortunate that with Blazing Dominion we have like one last set before we get overframes in core sets as well, and it's going to have a couple of really expensive secrets. And that's the thing, right? We don't even know the Cool Tune secrets yet, right? Like, if Cool Tune If Cool Tune also has secret rares, which I would assume it will, you know, then we're looking at a lot of good secret rares in this set, which maybe lets them split the value between each other a little bit. You know, maybe that's another thing that makes me wonder if this card is really going to be $100. I personally don't think it's going to hold that price tag. If Cool Tunes also has a secret rare, like, you're going to have a lot of good secret rares in this set. And that's going to be rough if you're trying to compete, I suppose, because if you can't play Cool Tune for budget, if you can't play any Fedralis Harmonia deck in general for budget, then I don't even know what's left in the upcoming format. I guess you're gonna have to play like the decks from the previous format, right? Like, you're gonna just have to hope that like your Mitsurugi without Harmonia or your Draco Tail whatever can keep up. Elf Note, I mean, Elf Note Lucina is also a secret, and I'm pretty sure Lucina is pretty expensive. Sky Striker, yeah, you can play Spy Striker. You can play Sky Striker for relatively cheap with the decks, but I guess enjoy getting Solemned and not being able to activate Engage for the rest of the game. So yeah, mixed feeling on it, but at least we do know the rarities now of all of these cards. So yeah.